Welcome to Be Undaunted. This is the podcast that helps you lead stronger, elevate your impact, and live with more energy.
I'm George Dom, former Navy fighter pilot, Blue Angels flight leader, and corporate executive.
And I'm Tara Collingwood, performance dietitian to Olympians, CEOs, and everyday people that are just under pressure. If you're ready to grow, to strengthen your leadership, and to reclaim your energy.
If you want to feel more intentional, more capable, and yes, more undaunted, you're in the right place.
Welcome back to Be Undaunted podcast. We are so glad you're here. And George, we have made it to episode 11.
Woohoo! Yeah.
Party.
Here we go. And well, today we're talking about a concept that honestly got both of our attention when we first heard about it.
You had found it and sent it to me, and I was like, ooh, this is totally something we should be talking about. It is a Finnish word called Sisu. It's spelled S-I-S-U, if you're listening and want to be able to picture it in your head like I do, Sisu. And there's not really a perfect English translation for it, but Dr. Elizabeth Lottie speaks about the concept. And so we both listened to some things that she had done, and we were inspired by it and did a little bit of research. And we're like, okay, this is really cool. So when we think about Be Undaunted for our podcast, the Sisu, what it means is it's like courage, resilience, perseverance, grit, all the things that are Be Undaunted. But there's like a little deeper meaning to it, almost like a little gentle compassion at the same time.
Yeah, it's being strong but gentle at the same time. It's what happens when you think you've got nothing left and somehow, some way, you still keep going.
Yeah, and I think if you haven't felt that in your life yet, you will. I mean, life is tough. And I think every single person here has either experienced this at some point or, maybe they will, but we've never really had a word for it.
Well, now they do. But let's define this a little bit better. So Sisu is this Finnish concept that means drawing from a deep inner reserve of strength during adversity. Not just ordinary perseverance, but strength beyond what you thought you had. I mean, it's almost like going back to our first podcast where we had Ryan Stramrud, who, the long ultra-distance swimmer, where he talks about, you reach a point where you just don't think you can go any farther, but then something kicks in and you just one stroke after the other for his swimming in order to get to the other side.
Yeah, there's that little reserve maybe that's in there that you have to dig into, or, life just puts you on your knees. Sometimes you just feel like you've been knocked out with something that's happened, something big that's happened in your life. We're not talking about the little things here. We're talking about big things that might happen in your life, but still you show up. You find that reserve. So it's not really, thinking about just athletic achievements or accomplishments in your life, but it's, some of those moments that when you decide to, maybe choose kindness instead of completely shutting down, you say, you know what, instead of avoiding, I'm going to have that difficult conversation. You ask for help. I mean, how hard is it for a lot of us to, ask for help? You get out of bed when you really don't want to, you're going through grief, it's these times that are that really strong time.
That's the real strength. One thing I love from Sisu was this idea of what they call the dark forest. And, that's life. Everybody eventually goes through one. If you haven't, you will at some point.
Yeah, it could be an illness, a divorce, just feeling that burnout. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe it's just a depression, trauma, caretaking, financial stress. I mean, we could go on, right, about all the things that we can go through in our lives.
Yeah, of course. Or even just feeling lost. When you're in it, you often don't realize how strong you actually are. You've been beat down one thing after another, and you're at a point now that you just go, geez, I don't know. And then you only discover that strength because somehow life demanded it from you, and you get moving.
Yeah, I think, in our culture, we're just constantly in this push harder, push harder, push harder, get through, you can do this. And that's what I found interesting with this concept, is that it's really almost stepping back and being more reflective and staying soft.
Yeah. Compassion, self-compassion, and this is where the conversation gets really interesting, because Sisu is not just push harder, although that's certainly something that we always think is this, I'm just not trying hard enough.
Yeah. And I think, again, as our culture, we just get that wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it almost seems like we glorify burnout, we glorify exhaustion, that no matter what, if I work so hard to exhaustion and I fail, nobody can ever fault me for not trying my hardest, right? It's almost a defense mechanism. We glorify, just keep going no matter what.
Yeah, it's that hustle culture, and people wear a badge of honor of I only survive on 5 hours of sleep, and some of those things. But again, it's this idea of resilience, but sort of gentle power, and I just love the idea of gentle power.
Yeah, because sometimes in the dark forest, when you don't think you have the strength to keep going, the strongest thing you can do is simply step back and get some rest, or God forbid you ask for help, or demands are being put on you from all different directions. You got to start saying no so that you can husband your energy to get moving again. Or sometimes you need to change direction. Adapt and overcome is a common phrase among my SEAL friends, right? Where I have to recognize that this isn't working now, but I still want to get to my goal, so I need to pivot. And then sometimes, we're just trying to prove something. It's ego. We're flailing just because of how we believe other people. What will they think of me? So anyway, Tara, how about have you thought about a time in your life where you experienced Sisu?
Yeah, and I don't talk about this particular time in my life publicly very often, but back when I was a freshman in college, I was so determined not to gain the freshman 15 that I went overboard. I was this nutrition major and into health and fitness and all this stuff. And so I started losing weight, and I started getting comments like, oh, not that I needed to lose weight, but, oh, wow, you're, looking really toned. And it snowballed. And I fell pretty fast, pretty hard into an eating disorder of anorexia. I was 85 pounds by spring break. They almost pulled me out of school. I went home for treatment that summer. My low was 79 pounds, it's insane. And I look back at it now and I'm like, how? But, everyone was trying to get me to, eat more and, get better and snap out of it and come on, kind of a thing. And I remember there was one particular moment where I kind of felt like this flutter in my heart. And I thought, what was that? And I remembered Karen Carpenter dying of heart failure, secondary of anorexia.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm gonna die. Like, you're really close to dying. I mean, I could gross you out with all the disgusting things that were happening in my body at the time, when you're that thin, and I just thought, I still have a purpose in this life. I didn't know at 18 years old what my purpose was. We talk about purpose a lot on this podcast.
Right.
And I didn't have it articulated, but I knew that God had a plan, and this wasn't it. It wasn't ending in the summer of 1993, like this was something I needed to. So, this idea, I think that's why I loved this idea of Sisu so much, is that I had to persevere. I had to find the resilience. I had to do it. Like everyone else, my parents, my brother, like everyone's, oh, come on, get better. But it wasn't until I had that pivotal moment where I made the realization that what you're doing is so self-destructive that you literally could lose your life. So in that moment, I just said, okay, I'm going to get better. And that was the turning point for me. And so it was, I didn't run upstairs and go, okay, Mom and Dad, let's order pizza. I'm done with this stuff. But it still took, it was a journey. It was a journey to get back. And, that was, gosh, 30 years ago or more. And it's still in my head. I mean, I don't know that you ever truly get past something like that. But I have, been weight stable and healthy for, 30 years now. And so I was able to get past it. And I think that's, it's that gentle resilience. I mean, that's really the best way that I can describe it.
Yeah, man, incredible. And the fact that, it's not something that is now forever gone, but you now have the tools, the skills, you've had the experience now to recognize it for what it is. And then, because we always talk about, the new story and the old story will come back.
It can. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that you've had some trials and tribulations in your life as well. What stands out in terms of this idea of Sisu for you?
Yeah. Well, frankly, I haven't had anything that was sort of existential, like you had. I lost a brother at a young age, and so forth. But I do remember there was one time when I was early on in flight training, and I was at a point where, this is something I really wanted, but man, it just was not working. I had a bad flight and I wasn't enjoying it. The system really isn't designed to make you confident, and flight school is all about, introducing something to you, demonstrating it, and then giving you a chance to try it. And then the next flight, you need to show that you can do it. And then right then you move on. You don't get a chance to get the reps in to get good at it. And so I thought at some point, I don't know whether this is for me. And I almost dropped out. But I think what kept me going was, the people in my life, my father, my family, my friends that were all rooting for me, and were excited for me about this opportunity. And then I looked around the squadron at some of the guys walking around that had the gold wings on their uniform. And I said, if they can do it, I can do it. So I just had to accept the fact that I wasn't naturally gifted at this. And I had to come up with a path where I just had to work harder than everybody. And then step by step, it all came together, and it all worked out. And then at some point when I had enough experience and I had reached a level of a skill level that I really then enjoyed it. And then I couldn't get enough of it. Right? and that's what motivated me for the rest of my 26-year career in the Navy.
Yeah, I think so much of resilience really is those quiet moments, when you have to reflect and go, okay, no one else is going to do this for me, and how badly do I want it? Whatever it is,
Yeah.
When you were like doubting yourself and saying, I don't know, I could just exit quietly right now, or I could say, you know what, let me put in the work and come back. And then you mentioned your brother too. I think that's for a lot of people, anytime you have a loss of someone very close to you, that's a time when, we have to build this sort of gentle resilience where there's quiet moments when you just can't imagine life without that person.
Yeah.
And yet you keep going. And you know that the person that you lost wants you to keep going. And so, I think that's another good example.
Yeah, I agree. It's one step at a time. The other thing is that, this idea of gentleness or compassion or whatever, too often we are harder on ourselves.
Yes.
Far more than anybody else would be or is, right? And that for me is sometimes the essence of this Sisu concept is give yourself a break, and don't be so judgmental, right? We're the first one to say to ourselves, you're a loser. What's the matter with you, right? And you have to kind of step back and go, no, I just need to work harder or I need to whatever the answer is in order to get going. And I love the old concept. I think Carol Dweck at Stanford, who written this wonderful book, Mindset, but it talks about how if you fail at something or whatever, you go, well, I'm not good at this yet.
Yeah.
And it's saying the word yet that keeps you okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get there, but I just need to keep working at it, right?
Absolutely.
Because this isn't a movie, right? Not every act of courage is this dramatic thunderclap, cue in the orchestra kind of thing. It's, it's sort of just, it's a day to day, just moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Even with social media, not everyone's life is as perfect as it appears in the mirror. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's make this practical for people who are out there thinking, okay, I'm on board. I like this little Finnish idea of Sisu. How do we build it? How can people sort of lean into this?
Yeah. Well, I would imagine the first thing to do is having a sense of purpose. We talked about that mission, having a clear idea for why you want to do this hard thing, because you're going to need that whenever you face setbacks and so forth. That's going to be what you fall back on, is having this clear idea of purpose. Why is this important to me?
Yeah.
And why do I need to keep going? So it's intentional.
Absolutely. I think training is another thing. We talk about that private voice saying, you can't do this, you can do this. That can be really powerful. Like you said, that purpose of guiding us, where am I going? But also, training. And so that's one of the things that I think we can do on a regular basis, is that we train with the little things so that when the big things come, we've already built up some ability to get through it. So we don't suffer just to suffer, but, doing some hard things, it may not be fun, but it actually literally does, train that. I think it's the anterior cingulate cortex or something like that we train every time we get into the ice plunge. That's what I tell myself. I'm like, you're training your brain to be harder, to resist things. And so what are some other examples of things that we can do to, do hard things in order to train for the Sisu?
I would say to your comment there, it's seeking out discomfort, right?
That's a great way to say it. Yeah.
Because so often it's human nature to avoid discomfort, right? And so we're always looking for lack of a better way to describe it, we're always looking for an easier way to do whatever. But sometimes you need to accept discomfort. You need to, take the stairs instead of riding the escalator, or or walking a few blocks rather than, driving or whatever it is, right? I think people get the idea. It's also just trying something new, because you're never going to be good at it when you're new at it. Learning how you master something is a great skill to develop. So how do you pick up something new and become good at it? Trying something new is always taking a step into discomfort, because you're going to be awkward. You're going to be, if it's a physical thing, you're going to be sore. If it's mental, you're going to be frustrated that you can't get it right away. It takes, maybe it's having difficult conversations, right? We so avoid having conversations with people that disagree with us.
Yes, I know I do. I am not a conflict person. I avoid it at all costs.
Yeah, but you just have to try them out, and then do it in a way that you have common ground on something, and then you're having the conversation because you're curious about what their thoughts are and beliefs and everything, and rather than trying to win the conversation, right?
Right.
It's more about having a conversation where at the end you have a better understanding of them, and hopefully they're curious also, and they're interested in having an understanding about where you come from. So, and there's lots of things we could talk about, public speaking or going out and starting a physical training program to get back in shape, all of that stuff.
What about starting a podcast?
There you go.
You mentioned the public speaking. I had a friend, this is many years ago, who joined Toastmasters, and she hated public speaking. And I'm like, why in the world would you join Toastmasters? She's like, exactly. That's why I joined Toastmasters, because I hate public speaking. And so I want to face it. And I know that it's going to be a skill that's going to be good for me in the future of all things in life. And so, but at the time, I was a young pup. This was many years ago. I was like, why would you ever do something that puts you into such discomfort? And now I'm like, oh, bring it on.
Yeah.
This is how I'm going to learn. Yeah. So, and I think it's also in the repetition of doing these things. You can try something once, but it's going back the second time, third time, the fourth time. Again, I'll talk about the ice plunge. The first time I went in that thing, I was like, why? I hate cold. This sucks. Why would I do this? And I lasted like 30 seconds. And then, which is the hardest 30 seconds. Once you get past 30 seconds, it's actually not bad. Well, it kind of is. But anyway, it was the repetition of going back and getting my brain around, okay, it's okay. It's okay. And embrace the discomfort.
Right. And, oftentimes it's the anticipation that is so bad that when you actually get into it, it's not so bad. I have a friend of mine, Sean Tucker, probably one of the greatest aerobatic pilots ever in the world. And he started flying because he was afraid to fly. And he started taking flying lessons just like your friend doing Toastmasters, was to overcome this fear he had. And wow, that took off exponentially. So
that's awesome. Now, we also think about, resilience as, everything we're talking about so far is in the brain, like try new things, get past it, go back and do it more, experience discomfort. But when we think about being gentle and being compassionate to ourselves, it's taking care of our physical body. Get the sleep, eat right, move your body, get the exercise, do your deep breathing, get that recovery that you need, because when you're in that state of stress, and, again, we're going back to kind of these life event stresses, you got to take care of yourself. Otherwise, that's going to be another thing that's going to be a strike against you and difficult for you to overcome.
Yeah, of course. You can't be resilient if your body is depleted.
Yeah, I think in the health and wellness space, this is becoming more and more prevalent. We're hearing the sleep industry is like a, $1 billion industry now, because people are finally starting to get it, that I need the recovery. I need the rest. There's so many apps now, Calm and Insight Timer and, Buddhify, all these different, wellness, mindfulness apps for that. So we have to actually do them. It's one thing to like, oh, I'm going to download Calm and then never open it. Right. So going and doing that meditation, even if it's a 2-minute meditation, a 30-second deep breathing, relying on kind of resetting our nervous system a little bit. And it's not just one person, right?
No, of course. There can be this concept of Sisu for communities, whether it's families, teams, friendships, cultures. And frankly, we need a lot more of that right now. Of course.
Yeah. Yeah. We are definitely in a world of busy, exhaustion, polarization. We're feeling isolated. We're feeling overwhelmed. And, sometimes it's just saying, I'm here with you. I understand. Again, it's that compassion, that gentleness.
Yeah. I heard somebody recently that we were talking about all the craziness in the world right now, as you just described, right? And everybody is, they're doom scrolling, and the news is all bad and everything. And somebody said, well, what do you do to have some hope I mean, you got to have hope to get up and, get going the next day, right? And this person said, it's getting out and about. When I'm out with people, whether it's at some sort of event, whether it's music or even some of these rallies or whatever, but when you're out with other people, that's what gets you excited again, and you're among people, and you get the feeling, okay, tomorrow's going to be a better day, so let's go.
Absolutely. Connection is everything. I mean, that social connection, when we isolate ourselves, we are truly alone. And so, really seeking out that connection if it's not naturally there in your life.
Yeah. So that brings us to the $1 million question. How do you know when to push through and when to stop? Because not quitting and self-destruction are not the same thing.
Right. So learning the difference. And, that's where Sisu comes in, that it just means, continuing on.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, it can also mean it pivoting, changing course,
right,
or asking for help, or finally admitting, this isn't working anymore. I need to step back and reflect and pick a new course.
Yep, that's right. And that takes a lot of courage in order to do that.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So if there's one thing we hope people will take away today, you are stronger than you think you are. The human system is designed to prevent you from getting injured or getting sick. And so that self-regulation is occasionally something that we need to overcome. The voice we're hearing that says, this is as far as you can go, may not be true, right? And you need to try to keep going, right? And it doesn't always look loud.
That's right. Yeah. It's not always loud. It could be just resting, healing, getting sleep, choosing kindness, just, trying something again, getting through one day at a time, and, looking for that, maybe beginning again. So it's that gentle power.
Yeah. And maybe Sisu is really about learning how to be both strong and compassionate, right? Sometimes at the same time. And I'd like people to remember that Sisu is an action-oriented mindset. It's not a feeling, it's an action. When things get hard, just focus on the very next step, just one more step. And you hear that from, marathon athletes, right? I got to the point and I just was trying to just take the next step and then the next step and then the next step. And that's what got me to the finish line.
Yeah, I always would tell myself when I kind of hit that, they always say the marathon begins at mile 20 because that's when your body has said, I'm done. And that's when the mind takes over. And that's really, what we're talking about. And what I would always tell myself when I got to that point in a race is, if you start walking, it's going to take you longer. This agony is going to keep going longer. Just keep going. And, of course, if you need to walk, you need to walk, but just keep going, right?
That's right.
So
that walking might be a little bit of recovery that you need to keep going.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're stronger than we think, but we need to be softer than we realize sometimes.
Yeah. Don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah, that's the idea of Sisu. So this was really fun to kind of explore this new concept. I think, George and I are going to create a whole new movement of Sisu. Maybe we'll have to get Dr. Lottie on the podcast sometime to talk about it. But,
boy, wouldn't that be great? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So as usual, everyone, we would love for you to subscribe, follow us, comment, rate us, and help us to continue on with our Be Undaunted podcast. And we will see you next time.
Yeah. In these amazing days of challenge and opportunity, just remember to hang in there and be undaunted. See ya.